in the wonderful world of audio, people have choices.
Oh, do they?
Lots of them, yeah. And one of them is, do I get a one box solution for my electronics, or do I spread it out and get multiple pieces, and which obviously is more work because now you got to pick and choose each piece, right? Versus let's get one and call it a day. Let's talk about the pros and the cons both ways.
There's a lot here, actually. And I think the most obvious one is if you get separates, you have more choice, right? There's fewer all-in-ones. But then you always got to worry about whether or not they're compatible, whether or not they do what you need and work together well.
Yeah, sonically speaking, you're mixing and matching sounds for the most part.
Unless you buy them all from the same manufacturer.
Yeah, that's the solution.
Yeah.
That's the easier solution. And hope that manufacturer has a characteristic sound or house sound that fits the bill for what you're after with the headphones or with the speakers or whatever you're using it for, But yeah, one thing I could think of is upgradeability. I remember back in the day where telephones used to come with built-in answering machines. It'd be a phone, and it would take a tape, a little mini cassette, whatever the hell it was, answering machine. And they weren't really, crazy. None of this stuff was that expensive, but phones were cheap relatively compared to the phone and answering machine. Mm-hmm. Probably 3 times the price to get the answering machine built in. Right. Trouble I always ran into when and of course I've had one of those back in the day. Now they have digital answering machines. There's no tape, but it's the same deal. Everything's integrated now anyway with phones, and hell, who even uses a phone on a desk?
No
anymore?
landline.
Yeah, it's all cell phones. Mm-hmm. But the point is that the cassette part would usually fail first. Mm-hmm. So now the answering machine don't work, but the phone's fine. So now what do you do? Now it's busted. It doesn't work as an answering machine. So do you go out and buy a new phone and answering machine again and pay obviously for both?
Right.
Or do you just get an answering machine and just keep using this phone that has a dead answering machine? And so there's no path to, if something breaks or upgradeability, you're stuck with what you got.
You get a little bit of that with hi-fi, but it's pretty limited. For the most part, the electronics are pretty reliable. You're less likely to see failure in one or the other. They're not mechanical devices. But it sort of depends on the person. This is just like everything else. It depends. In the low end, I think most people visually prefer the appearance of separates. Because if you're spending a few $100s on something, it's kind of more attractive, appealing in some ways to have the stack. It looks like you have something there. It looks more substantial.
Those 80s hi-fi things. Yeah. All the separate components.
You have a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
It looks
serious.
Cool. The old rack from JCPenney's.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it makes it look like you're getting something for the money, that's for sure.
It does.
Yeah.
Although the low end is also where you tend to have more integrated stuff available to you.
Yeah.
And in the mid-range, now you're more likely to go separates because there really isn't a lot of mid-range integrateds comparatively. You're buying a separate amp and a separate DAC almost all the time. But curiously enough, there are choices now in the high end for integrated, and they're actually good.
Yeah, well, something for example, like a bar talk, where it's a $20,000 piece. It's one of the highest end DACs you can buy. Just happens to have a built-in headphone amp. But and I've talked to a number of people that are thinking about it or have owned it or own it, all the above, right? Simply because it's simple.
Yes.
It works. It's one piece. They don't have to think about what cables to connect between the pieces. Right. It's got one power cord. It's room ready. You don't even need to plug it into anything except a wall and hook your headphone up to it. And when you think about that it's got a package going when you talk about a one piece and the high end of things, And I could see the same thing in the mid to low end too, where people, they appreciate not needing to think about anything. Mm-hmm. Just plug it in and it works and it's simple.
Well, the packaging is usually pretty good, especially if you're like at a desk. You don't want a big stack of stuff, right? You want it to just sit on your desk,
Yeah, if you could find like a decent sounding DAC with a headphone amp built in, which unfortunately doesn't really exist in our world. Well, at the higher end, it just doesn't exist. And that's the other thing to think about is that it depends on the level of speakers or headphones you're running, And that tends to follow suit. When people run the top shelf headphones, they probably have 3 or 4 amps. If they don't, they're going to, right? They're headed that way, and they might not even know it. So
I think there is some simplification that can occur here. If you're the type of person that knows you want to set it and forget it, you don't want to deal with it, you don't care, obviously the integrated is the way to go for you because it kind of eliminates the uncertainty with the different choices of the gear, the interconnect between them, the additional complexity in cabling and things like that, the physical size. So it's nice for that. And for something like a gaming setup or something, integrated is awesome, because do you really need every last bit in fidelity? Do you
you're
really
not
need the
after all
choice?
that.
Like, as long as you're 99%, who cares, right? Good enough. So if that's you, that's what you're looking for, or maybe it's a secondary setup and it's just for work and compact is more important, great option. However, we do see plenty of people in hi-fi where they want to have separates because they want the control. They want to be able to tweak and modify, and they might want 8 different amplifiers. So then it's not a contest. You're not going to get it integrated because, well, you're just going to be bored of it immediately.
Well, particularly if you're just at the beginning stages of it, you're just starting out, and you pretty much know it's nearly impossible to make the right decision the first time. I mean, in order to complete an entire system, unless you copy a system that you've already tried, heard, or someone else owns, you're pretty much going to want to upgrade components.
Yeah.
I
know, like gaming especially, you do want it's compact and all in one, because
it makes sense.
At your computer, you already have everything's plugged in. You need outlet strips. Then you have all separate things. Because I had the leanest stack one time on my desk for gaming, and then you need 3 power cords. And you need put another outlet strip in, and you already have one for your
cables
computer.
connecting all 3 pieces.
Everything, all wires everywhere.
Yeah, and if you're gaming, does it even matter?
And it's like this big,
It weighs about 40 pounds.
More than that.
Yeah.
Each piece is like
that's a serious system, And that's the thing. I mean, it depends what that's obviously if that's what you're after, that's the way you should go. I mean, these are ultimate systems, but yeah, if you're just starting out, I think a one-piece solution is fantastic. I think that's what it boils down to. If you're beginning and you don't even know where to go, you start the one piece, you get used to it, you understand the sound, right? You understand what its limitations are. Right?
That you can see where you want to go from there.
Yeah, I mean that's the simple way to start, especially if you're looking to start in the sub $1,000 category for electronics. It's way easier to find a one piece that does everything. It's got a DAC in it, headphone amp, volume knob.
Probably all works well together because it's designed to.
Yeah, there's nothing to think about. You don't need to spend anything on cabling, And then if that doesn't do it for you, doesn't cut it, then you start stepping up, and that's the way to go. And you could step up in a week, a month, a year. Who knows when, So I've seen people follow all these paths. They ultimately hit somewhere. They hit what to them is the ultimate system for them, and they're done for a long while usually. Some people take years to do it. Some people do it in a few months. Some people just stop where they are. Depends.
And it seems like a lot less, but there are a few people that they want that all-in-one high-end solution. Then they don't want to think about it ever again, right?
And you see companies, and it's funny, but you see companies like that have been around a long time, like Luxman and Ed, actually catering to that. I mean, and it's not like Luxman, Pioneer, the guys that made receivers in the 70s. Yeah. They're back with their receivers, with the nice meters, and we're talking $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 units, but it's all in one. Amplifiers, it's all there. And I've talked to people, typically older people, who just don't have the space anymore. They got rid of their 3,000-4,000 square foot homes, or they went to a condo and they got one or 2 bedrooms, and they're not setting up 3 racks full of gear anymore. They don't want to deal with it anymore. I get that. You reach a point where it's like, I'm going the other way. Yeah. And these high-end receivers that are well integrated, and these companies are throwing everything they know into it to come up with some really good sound. So, you could see both sides. You could see a multitude of sides to this.
Yeah, well, especially like in home theater, that's where it becomes a really big problem. As you know, it's like, what's that step past a receiver? Yeah. Oh, the complexity. Just go, all right, I need 17 different
3 stereo
amps.
amps, couple subs.
Yeah, you need a decoder. Yeah, so it just turns into a rack, right?
Especially if you try a all-in-one thing that's actually pretty good, or better yet, decent and cheap. Because that's really compelling, right? If you actually could get away with something that's reasonably affordable and it does a pretty good job, that's so much more. It's so much more appealing and easier to deal with than a complex system for a lot of people. So really, I guess you got to ask, where do you plan on going? How long do you plan on staying there?
Yeah, right.
Questions like this.
Yeah, at least look forward to the next year. What do you want to do? And if you don't know, then start basic, simple, and you'll figure it out.
Well, that's the thing with like multi-channel home theater. There's the gap between a $300 receiver and then going separates on everything,
Yeah.
that's like
Well, it's
infinite
huge.
money.
Yeah.
So like you just stay at the receiver.
Just with the
is what ends up
speakers, just with the speakers alone.
Yeah.
But there you go. There you have it. And we could go on and on, I'm sure, but we keep going around and around in circles where the same thing is it depends on you.
Right.
Depends on you, the person, the individual, and how far you want to take this. And you know, it's. But if anything, don't let all of this stuff that we just talked about thwart you or stop you or prevent you from trying it, because the trying part is easy. Get something that people recommend to go with the headphones or the speakers you're using, and give it a shot, and then build from there. You know, what's worst case scenario? Lost a little bit on the first piece. That's what. How much does an education cost nowadays?
There you go.
Yeah, it's an education.
If you look at it like a discovery process, then there really is no wrong decision. As long as you buy something you haven't tried before, well, you're learning.
Yeah,
you hope
totally.
and, well, it's good enough, right?
I mean, there's got to be parallels to everything, like golfing. How many golf clubs do people probably go through till they find? In fact, they never stop finding the best.
Sort
golf
of the
club.
same thing.
They spend people spend $5,000 a year on golf clubs.
Yeah, it's like people buying new model skis every year.
Yeah, right.
Know?
Yeah, right. Because they're bored with what they got. I get that too. You know.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's more fun that way. So, have at it. Thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Find the subscribe button and click it. Thanks.